it's been pretty snowy out here last few days, and headed out to the range. As you can see here, this is a path and got a lot of snow. So this is a path that I have to walk in the snow, and we've got about 1.5 foot of snow. So yeah, it's pretty deep. So today I'm going to work with handheld and weapon-mounted lights, and kind of doing a comparison between a couple pistols in .40 caliber. So got the SIG 229 and I got the Beretta 96A1. So I'm just going to do a little comparison there, but yeah, this is the path to my range. So a lot of people are very envious that I have my own range in my backyard, and it goes down this hill and right down yonder. So yeah, where I live, it's alright as long as you have somewhere to go, and I got moose tracks going around the property. So the moose have been around, probably making the dogs very upset. That probably explains some of the barking, and the random barking that they'll do. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and get set up and get going with the video. First thing I want to talk about is using a handheld light on a target, and I have a weapon-mounted light on my pistol, and I want to talk about the crossover from going from a handheld light to a weapon-mounted light. Now, in a previous video I discussed how one of the methods some people talked about was just dropping their flashlight immediately if there was a threat or whatever, but the idea of using a handheld light kind of implies that there's not really a threat at first. You're analyzing, and you know, it's almost administrative. So basically you're searching around, you're like, wonder what's going on over there or whatever. Now it's still, it's not really, it's a little past the middle of the day, so you're not really going to see that much here. So I'm not really going to be sitting there flashing it very much. I might accidentally just out of habit, but it's not really probably going to be something you're going to be able to see. But basically I'm going to go over a few scenarios, or a couple scenarios that I can think of that would be good to practice on the range if you're lucky enough to have something like this, or even practice it dry with an unloaded weapon. But you know, put a snap cap in there, make sure it's a snap cap, you know, big boy rules. So anyways, first thing I want to try is, you know, basically searching around, and then the point of engagement, the point at which you pull out your pistol. And for me, I went over one of the techniques and talked about how I wouldn't want to use that technique, just cross right into it, because of the convenience of having the light right here or whatever. And that's going to basically be being right here and not switching into a Harry's for reasons of pointing it at myself or whatever, and the confusion I've actually had of doing this number, stuff like that under stress. It basically works better for me to pull it back and go to a neck index and then readjust my body accordingly. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate that here. So go ahead and see in the light here, see a target, like, okay. And you basically engage with one hand. The next thing I want to talk about is dropping your flashlight, and figuratively speaking, for the weapon-mounted light. Now, the only scenario I can think of that is reasonable for dropping it literally and then going to a weapon-mounted flashlight is if you just can't live without the weapon-mounted light, because dropping it emphasizes you don't have the time to stow it, or you just really are going to be going all in, like I don't know, bounding through a door and clearing something out. But you identified something happened with your handheld light. I don't know, you're a police officer and all of a sudden you hear a scream or whatever on the other side of a door, and you gotta pull out your pistol, activate your weapon light, and then charge in. I don't know. I can't really think of too many good reasons why you would drop a flashlight that is actually spotted a threat or something like that. But the urgency that you'd have to have in order to drop your first source of light that you identified a threat with is that you just cannot shoot one-handed. I don't know why, but yeah. So anyways, basically the way I see it is if you went from a handheld light to a weapon-mounted light, I could see it after the initial engagement. So, first instance, you've responded to the threat's down, but you're still covering them. That's very common, covering them, and then basically switching to the weapon-mounted light that's on there, stowing this away so you can have a good two-hand support. Or a free hand while you cover them, do whatever other stuff you need to do. A lot easier to do stuff one-handed when you have a light on the weapon and you don't have to worry about juggling and stuff. So I could see that as being a more reasonable thing. The time in which the weapon-mounted light comes into play. And it's a very good one. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate what I'm talking about here. So you engage initially with the handheld light. And then switch over to the weapon-mounted light and what that would look like. Okay, so that's basically what it would look like to me. I'm bringing it back to where my flashlight is aligned, touching the button, keeping away from the muzzle. I have to touch the button on my TLR7. I don't have a flip switch, not very convenient, but however you activate it while your light is pointed, you're focusing on the threat, and you're basically just going by feel. Don't use your trigger finger, don't use your middle finger. This firing hand should not be moving its position. Let this hand do the work. My best recommendation, because if your gun is pointed at someone, it's probably because this might need to be used, right? So, at least that's my philosophy. So, the idea of basically pointing your flashlight at something and then dropping it, switching on your light, and then taking care of the threat with the weapon-mounted light only, to me that speaks to you had the time to drop it and then activate your light, at least for my light. Anyways, so here's the thing. If you have a light on somebody, they're probably going to be blinded with the high amount of lumens to where they're not even going to be able to tell that you are drawing your gun until you drop your flashlight and then you pull out something and then another light shows up in its place. I don't know about you, but that's just the way I see it. So I think initial engagement with the handheld light, you move, stow this, put on the weapon-mounted light, and you go from there. Do your momentary ons to scan or assess or whatever, but we'll talk about all that stuff with weapon-mounted lights later, the actual demonstrations. But that's just where I'm at and how I feel about these little techniques. So, moving on from that, the next thing in this video, it's going to be a little bit of a long one, as you can probably see down below. Next thing I'm going to be doing is basically a recoil comparison between the 96A1 and the SIG 229. Now, I do plan on comparing a Beretta against a Beretta, the PX4 against the 96A1, but I do like the 229, but I haven't shot it recently to kind of see what the recoil is like and how the follow-ups are, my interaction with it and stuff like that. So it's not going to be really going from the holster. I'm just going to be shooting it, transitioning targets, shooting multiple shots, stuff like that. It's going to be pretty basic. It'll just be like 1 or 2 runs and that'll be it. Okay, first up is going to be the SIG 229, and I'll just go ahead and do it, and I'll give you guys my opinions for those of you that are looking at the 96A1 and the 229, kind of a comparison, and those of you that aren't even considering the 96 or just thinking about the 229, we'll see how it compares to the 96, if that's even something you would be interested in, depending on the results. Okay, so that's the 229. notice it feels like the thing is just doing this number. It's going up a lot and it's bringing itself down pretty well, but it still climbs a little bit. I'm not really holding it too tight. I'm not really holding it that firm, and my reloads are really hot. So that's really my gauge for everything. Factory ammunition, it feels like a 9mm plus P out of this gun in my experience. So same with the 96, but I'm going to test my own reloads in comparison. So get out the 96. Okay, so same thing for the 96. I do have a light on it, but I'm pretty sure that this has not really done much because of how small it is. It doesn't really do much for the recoil at all, from what I remember. So anyways, let's go ahead and check it out. Okay, now shooting this one right up against the SIG, this one gives you a little bit more back in the hand. It's almost like you can feel it a little bit more in the palm. It feels like it kicks back more in the palm, but it goes back on target a lot faster. It seems it goes like right back on target. Yeah, I'm not even holding it that hard. And we got another magazine, so might as well. So anyways, it just seems like this one maybe kicks a little bit more, and I get a little feedback on my trigger. Everybody's a little bit different. Some people don't get any feedback on their trigger, but I do sometimes, depending on like how cold it is and how I'm feeling and how often I've been practicing and stuff like that, because the idea is to get off that trigger and let it reset, relax it. But I notice that my finger's pretty low, so it's making contact with the frame and the trigger, so I get a little bit of reverberation and kind of friction, so it feels like it pounds it. That's an issue for some people if they have like fat fingers or they're holding the trigger a little low. Glocks do that to me. But let me go ahead and load up another magazine in the 229 and see how it feels with this one fresh in my mind. Alright, and another 12 rounds. Okay, so it seems like because this thing is wrapped basically in this polymer grip, I feel that this A-squared grip, this is not original to this gun. This was a police trading gun, very cheap. This is the one where the front tritium sight came out, so I just used nail polish to fill it in. It works fine. I still got glowing dots on the back here, so anyways, it seems like this grip actually works to absorb the recoil, at least the felt recoil, the vibration that goes through the frame a lot better. Although you do get more of a snap backwards. You feel the movement of the gun. You can feel the action sliding in your hands, but it's not really aggressive, and when I get a competent grip on it, it goes right back on target. It just doesn't feel as powerful as the 96. However, I don't really have a problem with that feeling of the 96. I've been working with it a lot, and like this one, when I get a competent grip, I can get right back on target. But with the 96, I don't really even need a competent grip to prevent it from climbing. It just goes right back on target. It's pretty interesting, but I have no problem with the 229. It's just something that I would have to be basically putting my all into to control it completely and basically get it motionless. If I get a really competent grip, like very solid grip on the 96, the thing doesn't move, and actually it feels like the action's a lot smoother and the vibration tones down a little bit. So anyways, that's my comparison. 229's a great gun. Factory ammo, I feel like they're pretty much on par. Of course, you're not really going to get much feedback in this. It still has more recoil than the HK USP from what I can remember shooting my reloads. The HK USP just feels like 9mm, like slightly hot 9mm, but not like 9mm NATO maybe out of a Glock, but it's very controllable. But if you're going to get a 40 and you want to design for a 40 and to last forever with 40, get the USP 40. But the 96A1, it's a pretty good field gun for me. So is the P229. So anyways, that's my comparison of these two guns. on to the last subject of the video. Last subject I'm going to talk about is one-handed shooting. Now this is a video in and of itself, like its own video, but of course I'm going to take my trusty old 96A1 and one-handed shooting and practicing for one-handed shooting. I know some people say the reason I get a weapon-mounted light is that I want to be able to shoot one-handed while I'm doing other things. However, they don't want to train with a handheld flashlight because it's unstable shooting with one hand. I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with somebody about that, but it's kind of ridiculous. They don't want to shoot one-handed. They feel that a weapon-mounted light is good because it gives you the ability to shoot with two hands, and then when it comes up with having a handheld light in the other hand, they're like, well, I don't want to have to shoot one-handed, and you know, it's like one of the advantages they'll throw for the weapon-mounted light, aside from being able to shoot with two hands, is you can shoot one-handed and do something else. And yes, that's true. You can always do something else with your support hand, but that still requires you to be able to shoot competently with one hand, meaning that you can shoot fast and accurately without, you know, just spraying rounds in the general direction like a lot of people who shoot one-handed do. It takes a little bit of practice. And here's the thing, if you're going through handgun techniques, if you're going to be practicing shooting one-handed, why not practice shooting with a flashlight and stuff like that? Why not? It doesn't hurt, right? So practice the chin index or whatever, actually shooting one-handed, so you're not actually doing any contact or anything like that. If you're against using a handheld light, then find a method that works for you to where it's not so much different than just using the weapon-mounted light. But for me, I like the Harry's, and it works pretty well for most applications. I call it the prepped technique. That's just a nickname I have for what kind of technique it is. It's more for prepped in my mind. Like, your gun is already out. It's not a reactive engagement. It's basically like, all right, gun's out, like I'm clearing the house or whatever because I don't have a space for a weapon-mounted light, or it's just the light that I have to work with or something like that. I get home and my window's out or whatever, and you know, police are on their way, but I'm there just in case, whatever the scenario may be. That may not be legal in your area, but you know, for me, I'm just going to show how I go through shooting one-handed and practicing that. I don't really like to go slow. I don't like to close one eye, stick out my tongue, and try to bullseye shoot. I actually engage my threats. They're threats, not targets. At least when you're practicing on the range and stuff like that, and when you're in class, you know, take it seriously. Of course, take it slow, shoot as fast as you can, hit accurately, but don't take 10 years to do it. Okay, so the way I'm going to practice is I'm going to practice these less stable techniques. So basically, like the FBI one, I can barely see the beam of light here on the target. So I'm going to need the highest lumens possible to actually see the hot spot in the snow to make sure I'm on the target. It's going to be hard to concentrate on because I'm concentrating on the threat, and I need to make sure the threat's illuminated. This is the bigger test of if I've learned anything from my dry fire practice to index the light properly in the FBI technique and stuff like that. If I'm indexing it properly to keep it aligned while I'm shooting. So if it's basically become a habit, because at first it wasn't. So anyways, let's go ahead and get on. So. And we get to reload with a flashlight in our hands. So it's not the easiest thing to do. I just do the ice pick grip and I hold it that way because I shove my rounds in my pockets, and this bell prevents me from being able to you know, have it in the syringe technique, which is the recommended way. And even then I would have to have a small light to be able to do that, and it would pinch my fingers. It would be very uncomfortable. So ice pick grip is probably the best. Not shoving it down to where I can grab it, but just holding it like this and grabbing it with what's left, and then yeah, work with it. Find a way that works for you. So anyways, going back to it, so FBI method, and then of course chin method, and you can work your way, do barriers and stuff like that, but I'm just going to do it standing. Haven't done it in a while. Quick engagements and stuff like that with my weapon already out. So. Alright. Okay. There we go. Able to reload with a flashlight in my hand somewhat competently. Not as good as I would like, but yeah. I'm not going to rack the gun. There's no real reason for me to charge the slide when the slider release is going to work good enough. And even if I had to do that, I'd just go cigar method and rack it, and I'd probably have to flip the safety back on. Just go cigar method right here and charge it like so. That would be my way of manipulating the slide for malfunctions or whatever, just do that. So anyways, and again, so going from here to spotting something, and then aha. So it didn't exactly go right back on target because I let it float. I got a little cocky there, and it's like, I can relax my grip, and it just like walked right off. So, whatever. It was fun. It was fun while I was doing it. But my reloads are a little hotter. When I was doing a lot of my one-handed shooting of these, of this 96A1, it was with factory ammo. So, can kind of skew your perspective every now and then when you have reloads as hot as mine. You go to your reloads and it'll typically, travel a little bit. So, yeah, doesn't look like it was too far off, but yeah, that's just me taking rounds out to the range and doing stuff. Thought I'd bring you guys along, show you all the snow, and yep, I got some work to do on getting these targets snow free, if you will. So anyways, hope you liked the video. Go ahead and leave a comment, and please subscribe.